In today's video, we are going to discuss the power of imagination because I believe it'll tie into what we spoke of in Sunday's video, finding purpose. What is our purpose? I believe one of the key elements of purpose is imagination, as it is stated here, because one of the things that I like to do is every now and then to go back and revisit the Corpus Hermeticum. Because as we consistently and consciously work with the two gifts of speech and mind, with intent, focusing our imagination on what we desire, we begin to understand what was communicated more so. This is part of the ongoing journey of higher degrees of realization. It says, God hath bestowed both mind and speech equal to immortality. He hath the mind for knowing God, and uttered speech for eulogy of him. And if one useth these for what he ought, he'll differ not a whit from the immortals. Nay, rather, on departing from the body, he will be guided by the twain unto the choir of gods and blessed ones. So, another way of looking at this is that we are given the two gifts of speech and mind, imagination, and we have the ability to use it consciously to create the reality that we desire. As I say this, we receive desires within. And it says, and if one useth these for what he ought, which is stimulated by desire. Now, Napoleon Hill guides us through some segmentation. Let's look at this for a moment, because I'd like to tie this into a deeper degree of revelation of my experiences when it comes to working with imagination. And I trust that some of this information contained within this video shall further inspire you, as well as further confirm perhaps some of the things that you've already been doing, and thus encourage it. He says, the imaginative faculty functions in two forms. One is known as synthetic imagination, and the other as creative imagination. Synthetic imagination. Through this faculty, one may arrange old concepts, ideas, or plans into new combinations. This works with the material of experience, education, and observation with which it is fed. Now, creative imagination, he says, through the faculty of creative imagination, the finite mind of man has direct communication with infinite intelligence. It is the faculty through which hunches and inspirations are received. It is by this faculty that all basic or new ideas are handed over. It is through this faculty that thought vibrations from the mind of others are received. It is through this faculty that one individual may tune in or communicate with the subconscious mind of others. Now let's reflect upon that really deeply here, because I believe that this is very much related to our goals and our visions. So many of our goals and our visions involve others. I call this the spirit of harmony. In order to bring forth a vision, a relationship, a business, it involves dealing with others to some shape or form. So when he says it is through this faculty, which is creative imagination, that one may tune in or communicate with the subconscious mind of others, we want to understand it more so. So he goes on to further say, the creative imagination works automatically. This faculty functions when the conscious mind is vibrating at an exceedingly rapid rate, as for example when the conscious mind is stimulated through the emotion of a strong desire. Now we've been speaking about this we've been calling this resonance. We tend to draw people into our lives that we are resonant with. Now, we could also say that about environment, circumstance, information, and so forth. So, synthetic imagination can be looked at as looking for information or inspiration in the outer world to come up with ideas or visions. In other words, you see somebody and they have a certain kind of experience of life, or they have a business or whatever it is, and you see what they are experiencing or what they have, and you say, I would like to have that. Now, creative imagination is going within and asking the question, what do I truly desire? And what we may find is that it's actually a combination of synthetic imagination and creative imagination. For example, a person might say, I also desire to have a business like this other person. However, I want my business to operate a certain way. And when I look around, I see others operating businesses in different ways. But I really feel it in my heart that operating a business the way I imagine is possible. At that point, a person is connecting to faith. Now, we've been discussing faith and belief. Now, there's many definitions to belief, but let's look at it from the perspective of reference experience. So if a person has created a lot of success in their life in business, maybe multiple businesses, or has been on the journey for an extended period of time, they have reference experience. They have dealt with teams, with prospects, with clients, with other businesses, with masterminds. They have tried many different things, and they have found success in some of those things that they've tried. Maybe a whole bunch of those things that they tried. They've also found what they could say as what works and what doesn't work. And all of this forms beliefs in the individual. We could say that that individual is, in a way, working with synthetic imagination, although stimulating the journey to create the business success could have been creative imagination. And through the journey, they have formed beliefs. Now, faith, we can look at it as beyond reference experience. If something does not exist right here in the five sensory world, but we have a vision, a desire to see that exist, then we tap into the power of faith. Now, belief assists in the faith because if a person has created a bunch of success in their life in the entrepreneurial world, and then they come up with an idea that does not exist, they can say, oh, even though that doesn't exist, I have a higher degree of confidence to bring forth that vision into reality. And if a person says, why? How do you have the confidence? Why do you have the confidence? And they may bring up reference experience. They may say, I've been through other challenges or similar challenges, but what I have seen is the challenge turned into opportunity, the transmutation of it. And so, because I've done it before, I could do it again. Now, if a person does not have reference experience, that's totally fine. We call this being childlike, as we spoke about this in Sunday's video. We, some way, somehow, recognize that a reality is going to be brought forth. The hows reveal themselves. So if we go back to earlier stages of our journey in childhood, we recognize that so much of what we imagined was creative imagination, and we were stimulated by desire. We had a desire to go do something. And if for some reason it didn't work out how we imagined, we would seek some counsel in others, asking them why it didn't go the way that we intended. And others share their opinions. They share their beliefs. And a lot of times these beliefs are based on their reference experience. However, one of the things that we recognize as we move down this journey is that perhaps a bunch of these beliefs, or maybe a lot of these beliefs that we've identified with subconsciously, are now distorting our connection to intuition, which, when we have a desire and a vision, we go through the purification of the mind to release from those beliefs, cultivate a higher degree of faith. Now, we can say that those beliefs are relatable to the synthetic imagination, and that faith is relatable to creative imagination. Yin and yang is in the yin and yin is in the yang. We recognize that this is all part of learning how to use the two gifts of speech and mind. Now, what he says here is the conscious mind is stimulated through the emotion of a strong desire. Now, this is true for creation itself. When there's a desire, that desire is impressed on the subconscious mind via vision or imagination. And through the fusion of that desire plus imagination, a person remains consistent on the journey, incorporating both belief and faith. Or, if the belief or reference experience did not exist, faith, all the way till completion. Thus, they have learned more lessons in the conscious use of the two gifts, speech and mind, imagination. So what we want to learn is how to encourage imagination, how to work with both synthetic imagination and creative imagination, and move down the pathway of working more so with creative imagination as we can bring forth visions that perhaps in a certain stage of our life we doubted as a result of incorporating certain beliefs. Now, George Hruebel, and I've done a discussion on this book, the book is called How to Make Your Mental Pictures Come True, articulates a process of stimulating desire to a degree where a person remains consistent. Now think about this for a moment, and I'll reflect back on my own experience. In the earlier stages of the entrepreneurial endeavor, 2009, 2010, 2011, I noticed that I would automatically get out of bed and I was so excited for the day because the desire to create the results was strong. And I would do all the things. I wouldn't procrastinate. And, there were times where, let's say, I fell off, and in certain instances, a lot of times. But that was grounds for cause and effect reflection, which is essentially looking within myself and saying, what is it that is going on within myself that I need to change as far as programming within myself? Make the changes to the programming, and as a result of changing the programming, through perhaps autosuggestion, as discussed in last Thursday's video, where we talked about the power of the subconscious mind, I recommend watching it, I changed. And through the changes that occurred, I noticed that I was automatically doing the things that I know I needed to do because I was changing my beliefs in relation to those things. So I recognize that the evolution of beliefs is part of the journey. And what we want to do is we want to honor our own interpretations from within. We can certainly find interpretations from others. However, I believe that one of the aspects of this journey is to build this inward relationship, the internal relationship, and receive the accurate thinking, and you could say creative ideas or creative imagination-based beliefs, interpretations from within ourselves. Because infinity is within us. You could say the world is buried within us, and it is expressed outward based on what we are imagining. So the source is within. Now, this is something that we understand more so as we work with this information. We begin to trust this ability to find the answers within, the beliefs within, the interpretations within, to the power of the segmentation here, creative imagination. So rather than saying, what are others thinking about this and how do others see reality? We can navigate our conversations with others and say it more from a higher degree of discernment. What are others saying that is in resonance to my vision? And also, number two, if I look within myself, can I find this answer within myself? As he had stated, it is the faculty through which hunches and inspirations are received. It is by this faculty that all basic or new ideas are handed over. Now, what this does is it also calls forth an external version of it. So you can find the answers within yourself, or others show up. So when he says one individual may tune in or communicate with the subconscious mind of others, we recognize that the desire plus imagination makes things happen. People show up, information shows up, and it seems to reflect from within the answers that we're looking for. Because perhaps we have not learned that we can find it within ourselves. We can travel in our imagination, as was discussed in the lucid dream experience that I shared in Sunday's video and last Sunday's video. I'll put a link in the description. It's an infinite world within ourselves. That is the source of what is expressed out here. Although we might not be taught these kinds of things because we have learned certain beliefs that would say otherwise, and that's fine. Those beliefs may have served us for an extended period of time. So we can work with both the creative imagination and the synthetic imagination. And what I find is that they complement each other really well. So let's get into what George Shrubel has to say. He says, we must first be familiar by means of outward observation and experience with the things which relate themselves to the inner picture. If our thought of $5,000 is a vague one, then before we try to see it clearly in our mind, we must go to the bank and ask the teller to show us 5 1,000 bills or 50 100 bills, which we study carefully. And in this way, we get more light upon the money. We are able to see it mentally more clearly. Now let's tie this into desire. When a person starts to see it vividly and clearly in their imagination, they start to experience the 5 senses in their imagination: taste, touch, smell, sight, hearing. And depending on what it is that they are imagining, the 5 senses are engaged in the imagination. As we engage in that imaginal scene, recognizing that there is a reality where that exists, we fuse with that via that desire, and we go down the journey to realizing. So we stimulate the imagination. He says, so with the business enterprise. If it is an automobile business we have in mind, we visit automobile factories and observe the method of building an automobile. So with the home, we visit the homes of our friends. We become acquainted with the various kinds of architecture, the kind of brick and timber, the arrangement of rooms, and every other detail which will help to throw light upon the thought of the home which we are contemplating now. So what he's suggesting is to stimulate the creative imagination, we can benefit from some synthetic imagination stimulus. And I've got 7 of them right here that I work with. So why are we doing this? Again, going back to the quote from the Corpus Hermeticum, it says, and if one useth these for what he ought, he'll differ not a whit from the immortals. God had bestowed both mind and speech equal to immortality. I believe it's part of our purpose, and I would even say our grand purpose, to know imagination. and to have such a conscious ability to work with our imagination that we can discern and really go into that resonance to see what is true. I believe this is even more important today than ever before. Because if you look around the internet, you will hear many different people communicating their beliefs. Anytime that there's any kind of communication, chances are there are some beliefs being infused in the communication, whether the individual is aware of it or not. So we take the responsibility. We develop the ability to discern which beliefs resonate with us, either through reference experience or which beliefs, interpretations, perspectives, paradigms resonate with that vision. The beautiful thing is that when you go into your imagination and you commit to a vision, you experience the resonance. You allow intuition to guide you via the resonance. You know who to talk to. You know what information to consume. You know what resonates to the practice and the joy and bliss of being on the journey to realizing the vision. As I say, I value the journey and the destination. Here's another reason why. Because we get to practice further developing this connection to intuition. And as he says, it is the faculty through which hunches and inspirations are received. It is by this faculty that all basic or new ideas are handed over. Through the faculty of creative imagination, the finite mind of man has direct communication with infinite intelligence. Now reflect back on your experience. Think of a time where you felt, and the key word is felt, one so deeply with that intuitive feeling that you knew what to do and not do. We call this Wu Wei. And when it came down to your creative expression, your artistic expression, your entrepreneurial endeavors, conversations with others, or if you have experienced what we call challenges or problems, you notice that some way, somehow, you were able to express and say things and communicate in a way that turn that challenge or problem into an opportunity. That's a form of energetic transmutation. You did this by remaining tuned in. Now, what we want to do is encourage this. So let's emphasize this again. Let's bring it into a summary before we get into the 7 ways here of what we have discussed so far. So we are given the 2 gifts of speech and mind, which we can call imagination. Pictures worth 1,000 words. We have creative imagination and synthetic imagination, such as the segmentation, or how Napoleon Hill described it in Think and Grow Rich, which can be very helpful. Synthetic imagination could be looking at the 5-sensory world and coming up with ideas for what we desire to see brought forth, as well as ideas to help us solve certain challenges that we have. Creative imagination is the ability to tune in via intuition and receive the hunches and inspirations within. And as he said, one individual may tune in or communicate with the subconscious mind of others, thus drawing people, environment, circumstance, information to us in interesting, rapid ways. That's creative imagination. Now, it's also important to recognize that what we're explaining here is something that falls within the scope of the all, or infinity. So we can continue this explanation and understanding as we continue down this journey. However, we want to encourage it more so. So we may rely upon synthetic imagination more so. We start to tap more into creative imagination, and faith, as we've been discussing all throughout the videos, helps us with this. And thus it's important to study, understand, and practice faith to a higher degree, which again goes beyond reference experience a lot of times. So here are 7 ways to do it, because what we're really doing is working with both creative imagination and synthetic imagination. But however, we are going to align more so with creative imagination so we can bring forth higher degrees of great work, innovation, artistic expression, and so forth. 7 ways. Now, the first is engage in conversation with someone who has the results. See, I remember a story that I would like to share. There was a mentor. He was a manager of mine when I was in corporate, and I noticed that he was always calm whenever we had a technical challenge that would impact the organization. And these were major challenges, resulting in major downtime. A lot of people flooding the help desk, reporting via calls, and so forth. But he always maintained this calm. And I wasn't used to that because in my life, up until that point, whenever there was some kind of chaos, everyone around me was panicking. Almost like the belief was, if chaos, panic, get frustrated, get angry, start blaming, and so forth. But he never had that. So I engaged in a conversation with him one time, and I said, why is it like that? Why is it that you can remain calm? And he said, don't we always solve the challenge? How many challenges have we gone through where we were able to figure it out? Why is it that this one would be different? Knowing that if we remain calm and we have faith, recognize that we have the resources, we have everything we need, we'll actually find the solution faster. See, it is through these kinds of conversation, people who already have a certain psychology that have the results that we want, when we engage in conversations with them, they transcend our beliefs. They help us see things from another perspective. Number 2, teach what you know to others. Now, there's a reason for this. It's called cybernetic loop. The teacher is the student, and the student is the teacher, to see it from the perspective. Because as you teach, you also learn. Because one of the things that I found as I teach is that I receive information as to what do you do about this, and how about this scenario? And I find better ways of articulating what it is that the student is experiencing. I also understand through their own reference experience what kind of beliefs that they're identifying with and what the beliefs are playing out as in theater in their life, how they relate to others, information, and so forth. And through these reference experience, I can identify within myself any kind of beliefs that I have that doubt or any kind of interpretations within myself that cause a sense of doubt that this student will not be able to finally understand. I see this as an internal challenge. As a student shows up within my awareness, my goal is to facilitate the transformation, so I take the responsibility. If the student didn't learn, then I didn't teach as effectively. Now, I'll keep aiming to improve my teaching until the transformation has occurred. And through the process, we find creative ways to communicate, conscious use, higher degrees of conscious use of speech and mind and imagination, innovative ways to teach. Could be saying things differently or a different teaching style. For example, this process of learning from teaching others brought forth a lot of teaching models, such as the one that I shared in Sunday's video, the Kolb's learning cycle, as well as one of my favorites, the format learning model, in which when we communicate, we speak from why is something important, what, the theoretical breakdown, how to apply it, and what if, where else can you apply it. All of this came from a strong desire, as he says here, strong desire and faith that some way, somehow, I will be able to stimulate this end result in the other person. Again, these hunches and inspirations, and even the information was a result of tuning in or maintaining resonance or faith in that vision. Number 3, read an autobiography. Again, it goes into a lot of the understanding in regards to psychology. If someone has the success that you desire, already produced the success, consider reading their autobiography, if there is one. There were two books that had a big influence on me. I think it was around 2010 or 11 when I read them, that brought forth a higher degree of creative imagination that helped me solve certain challenges that I was having in my IT business. As well as the individuals had certain psychological views of how reality works, which I integrated with their beliefs. And as a result, I was able to stimulate a higher degree of faith and creative imagination via those beliefs. And the books were Life Hacked by Alan Wong. I'll put a link in the description to the titles. And The Dream by Gurbakhsh Sahal. Number 4, seek inspiration in art. Over the last 4 or 5 years, I have developed a greater appreciation for art. Now I'm talking about different kinds of art. My favorite being performing arts, but you can have an appreciation for art when you recognize that every artist infuses in their artwork creative imagination. It's in a way a speech that is being presented in their art. And if you allow yourself to be open and suggestible to the essence of their artwork, what you'll notice is you'll see things in your imagination. You'll be stimulated, such as, very relatable to how he's saying here. So with the business enterprise, if it is an automobile business, we have in mind, we visit automobile factories and observe the method of building an automobile. See, we're looking for our inherent connection to be deepened with creative imagination. So we do this by looking for that creative imagination in the art that has been expressed by others. Number 5, take a trip down memory lane. So one of the benefits that I get from sharing these stories from my past is I'm able to go back to these experiences in my imagination, relive them with this heightened level of awareness that we develop as we continue to have more experience and understanding of the conscious applications of imagination. And we're able to look back at those personal reference experiences of the past and appreciate and understand them more so. Such as the story that I shared with my mentor. I didn't really put 2 and 2 together until I sat down to put together this video. I actually took a trip down memory lane to that conversation that I had, and I was able to pull a important lesson that he was communicating. Now, that conversation had many different lessons. I'll share the lessons in different videos in relation to the subjects. But in relation to our conversation today of stimulating creative imagination, I was able to go back to that and say, what was stimulated as far as creative imagination goes as a result of engaging in the conversation with someone who has the result that I was looking for, the ability to maintain calm during chaos. Number 6, develop a new skill and relate it over to another skill. So if you're developing a skill right now, let's say it's public speaking or sales or certain kind of artistic expression, performing arts or something like that, then consider developing another skill in parallel and see if you can parallel the lessons. For me right now, it's snowboarding. I've been mentioning this all throughout the videos. Every time I hit the slopes, one of my goals is to observe at the end of each run what I have learned and what I have learned about how I learn, so I can translate that over to, without even necessarily bringing it up, but just allowing it to stimulate creative imagination to express and articulate these videos in a way that will be relatable to some that can benefit to hear the same message from a different perspective. Because at the end of the day, we're saying the same thing all throughout these videos, all throughout these discussions, all throughout these books. This journey is so much about the conscious use of the two gifts of speech and mind, or imagination. Or imagination creates reality. And there's many ways of saying it. Now, because one of my desires, and thus going through the different experiences, such as these ones here, stimulating a higher degree of awareness, and also stimulating a higher degree of desire, because one of the things that I notice is when I snowboard, take trips down memory lane, seek inspiration in art, read autobiographies, and a recent one that I just read that I also found to be very inspiring is Somebody to Love, the biography of Freddie Mercury. I was able to tap into his psychology and understand how he goes about during his performances, because his 1985 performance at Live Aid is one of the most inspirational performances. And that actually can tie into number 4 here, seeking inspiration in art. Every time I watch that performance, I learn something new. And when we go about it with this belief that I'm sharing with you, that when you engage in conversation, when you teach others what you know, when you read an autobiography, when you seek inspiration in art, take a trip down memory lane, develop a new skill, and also visit the places that inspire you, such as what Shubal was speaking of here, from the perspective of stimulating creative imagination. It's another way of saying what we've heard many of the poets say all throughout the ages. They see God through these forms of expression. And so thus, ways like this, and these are some suggestions, you certainly can find some that have a equivalent of what I'm suggesting here that you can add to this list, or perhaps you have your own, which I would like to encourage. Because our goal is to do a few things. Number 1 is to transcend past beliefs that don't resonate with us, that aren't necessarily representative of the kind of creative expression that we would like to see our great work, which is also to inspire others, which can be done through many different things, such as the examples: entrepreneurship, leadership, artistic expression. Any form of expression, anything you touch, turns to gold, because there's gold in everything you touch. And there's gold in everything everyone else touches, and you can see that gold when you recognize that it is within yourself. So let's reflect back on the Corpus Hermeticum to tie this all together. God hath bestowed both mind and speech equal to immortality. He hath the mind for knowing God, and uttered speech for eulogy of him. And if one useth these for what he ought, he'll differ not a whit from the immortals. Nay, rather, on a departing from the body, he will be guided by the twain unto the choir of gods and blessed ones. So there we are. We have an opportunity each day to practice the conscious use of imagination. And we can work with imagination to bring forth what we desire, and also we can work with imagination to recognize that infinity is within us, and we can, as we discussed in the last video, aim big. Because according to the internal infinite world within, the all, it is only our own interpretation of what is big and small. And what we truly want to do is go after what we truly desire and stay committed to it. And maintain this intuitive connection. Because it is through the intuitive connection that we find the hunches, inspiration, people, environment, circumstance, and information that shows up. We can also call this the Wu Wei process, or effortless way of bringing our vision from a place of flow. So let's further encourage this with an affirmation. We can say, I recognize that through the faculty of creative imagination, I have a direct communication with infinite intelligence. Hunches, inspirations, ideas, insights, and perspectives flow through me, and I'm able to express that light on whatever it is that I'm experiencing and seeing things for how they truly are. I recognize that this is my inherent ability. my desire to know the inward reality is expressed through my creativity and artistic expression, innovation, and my appreciation to understanding the visions, desires, and creative imagination in others. I recognize that the teacher is within me, and I am the teacher to others. I inspire them, and they inspire me. Past, present, and future brings me to the ultimate destination, which is unity and oneness with the divine, which expresses through me, further inspiring upon reflection, infinity and creative imagination within me. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.